If we now move to career advice, and we can start addressing experienced professionals, one of the most common topics that is being discussed by every person who is at work is obviously the financial topic, including salary negotiations, bonus expectations. Um, do you have some advice or insights onto this matter? How would you negotiate with your manager? What to do if the bonus is not as expected? How to prove that you deserve more bonus that you have been given? I mean, I know these are a lot of questions to tackle at the same time, but
So this is an interesting topic because I think, and that's obviously I'm also call it an actor in this subject myself. But so I think that something I see people often not realize is you cannot get something for nothing. So a lot of people are just unhappy because they think that they deserve more, but it's kind of a bit abstract and unquantified, and there's basically, aside of their own subjective feeling, that there's basically no substance to this ask. It's just I'm unhappy. And this is not a really good way to actually negotiate anything. The negotiation always has to start by you providing value, you getting people to recognize that the value exists and that it is differentiated, meaning it's not a generic value. Generic value has a price, but differentiated value has a much higher price. And then once you have actually established that you have this differentiated value, then you need to take a risk. If it's a great year at the bank level, at your desk level, at your individual level, and all stars aligned, and your manager is a good guy, then maybe by passively doing nothing, you will get a big raise. Maybe. But that's not how usually it works, because if you don't actually express anything and you didn't demonstrate anything, be it at the job itself, but also at the desire to be compensated more, the system will passively not compensate you. And what I mean by it, like, people often get angry because they think it's their manager trying to screw them or this or that, but it's not true. It's just that if you didn't get discussed at all, because nobody actually knows what you're about, what's your case, why should we focus on this person, the discussions are about other people who then get a decision allocated to them, either a positive one or a negative one or middle one or whatever. And then you're in the common, what I would call the common denominator, meaning this big amount of people that didn't really get a very, very personalized consideration. They just got whatever happened to be happening this year. And often that means they're going to be a bit disappointed.
Which is usually what happens at the junior level. Correct. I guess it happens also at more senior levels for people who actually push for themselves.
Yes, so at the junior level, that tends to happen, but the good thing is that you still have this, call it ranking system, often in banks, where they would say, okay, this person is top bucket, this person is middle bucket, this person is bottom bucket, whatever.
No buckets.
So yeah, or maybe no bucket. But and that tends to be like reasonable. So you tend to know where you are and so on, and you can talk about it. As you transition into, as I said, associate and then VP, it becomes a bit more fuzzy and more like dispersed, both in terms of signal and in terms of actual feedback, knowing where you stand, and so on. And so I would say that getting a big recognition in terms of compensation is probably a 3-step process. So first step is you need to be good and consistently be perceived as such. Then you need to actually maybe formalize some sort of target with your manager.
In terms of numbers?
In terms of numbers, both in terms of what is expected from you to deliver and what sort of numbers you expect for that sort of delivery. You need to do that reasonably early in the year, meaning you cannot wait to get lucky to then go and want more compensation in November, because that's not how it works. The budget have already been closed and he can't do anything. And then once there's a framework that has been established, then you deliver, then there's a strong case. Like, everyone in management knows, okay, this is before, this is after, this has been delivered, this has been discussed. it's all kind of integrated into our the way we think about compensation. It makes sense that if there's just a little bit of luck and maybe not even that much luck, let's say the bank is doing okay as a whole, not particularly good, but not particularly bad either, you will get a good portion, at least, if not the full portion of that recognition you were expecting. So I would say it's a combination of being skilled and getting your skills known and getting people to recognize that these skills are worth something, and then discussing what is this something in an open way. And I would say the difference between people who manage this process and people who don't manage it is often, I would say, people who don't want to take any career risk. Because when you start this process, when you open this, call it box, Pandora's box, exactly, you're exposing yourself a bit. You take the risk of being told no, because a lot of people, as I said, might not be aware of how good they are, and so maybe they prefer to remain in this state where they think they're perceived well and keep comfortable and doing their work, and they will get few raises here and there following the overall bank, but no particular specific consideration. When you push your management, then you force them to crystallize the decision. Do they give you what you want or they don't? And this will have consequences. So, because if they give it to you, obviously that's great for you, but then now the expectations are raised, so you probably be expected to produce even more because you've been recognized and now you're at the next level. If you don't get it, what does it mean? This is what people often are afraid about. They don't push the discussion to the level where they can get told no. They just stay at the level, or I would like to get a raise. And then the raise doesn't happen because whatever excuse. The bank is not doing well. Next year, we had to pay someone else who resigned. The bank did well, but your book is just flat versus last year.
The list of excuses.
Exactly. The list of reasons is endless, and you cannot fight against the list because the list is just ever expanding, and once it finishes, there's a new one. So the reality is it just means while you're just going through the elements of the list, it just means that you didn't push the conversation to the level of discomfort that is needed to get an actual answer. And that level, because it's not costless to give you a raise. There are compromises have to be made. Maybe they will need to pay less someone else,
yeah.
or maybe they will need to allocate more of the extra that the floor has to you. And even worse, maybe they will need to actually penalize a lot of people to give you what you want because it's a down year. So there is actually less money for the whole floor. So everyone is down by default, and you're trying to be up. The math just doesn't math, like you say. Mm-hmm. So you're actually asking for something that is not free, and so you need to force the decision. And when you force it, there's the risk it doesn't go your way, and then you will have to face this thing where either you kind of pushed your luck a bit too much, and then actually you're not really worth what you thought you were asking, and you just keep the good work, and maybe next year, the year after, you will actually have scaled up to that level. This is one healthy-ish reaction. Second, less healthy reaction is, oh, I didn't get paid, so now I'm not going to work because, I don't know, I'm upset. This is the guarantee that you will never actually get paid, ever. People don't owe you some sort of understanding of your internal conflicts. They will just see that you're now underperforming. If anything, it confirms that they should not have paid you before.
Yeah, it confirms their presupposition that
which may or may not. Maybe it was true actually. It wasn't an excuse. Like it's not always excuses. Maybe they tried, they couldn't for that year, but then you're kind of punishing the business somehow, and they're just not gonna reward this behavior. And the third way, which can be a way, is to just look for a role somewhere else. That's when maybe you kind of right actually. You have value to offer, but it just happens to not be recognized for whatever reason within your firm. Maybe it's not possible because the role you want is already taken. Maybe just your manager doesn't get along with you. Maybe this exists. It is real for plenty of people. But there are a lot of people that get stuck in this limbo of not actually knowing because they never push the thing until the level of discomfort to make it known if they're gonna get recognized or not. So they just keep into this 2-3 years of actually not really knowing anything.
It's interesting to drill down into this topic because there are many detours which can be taken. One of them is a psychological detour, because the fact of needing to go and talk with the management to both let them know about your expectations and let them know about what you can deliver, that needs a few psychological traits. One of them being confident, another one being confrontational, another one being having not being agreeable. And these three factors are actually not that common, especially the intersection of the three factors. So it requires quite a lot in terms of psychological effort to go and push into that direction. And then there is the other detour, which is, let's say, bureaucratic, which I guess by default, nobody's gonna do you any favors. So that's why you are by default in the no bucket or the low bucket, unless you actually go and fight for it. And I think that's where most people stay, the limbo of staying undecided, staying on the default case, and fearing the contact or the confrontation, which might come back as a rejection, which is not what people want to feel, because it's going to cause some internal conflicts and the inside pain that is hard to deal with.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. You will have to be able to tolerate a certain level of discomfort, of respectful confrontation, of disagreement, and of level of call it introspection and taking feedback, and also maybe humility, you can call it. Sometimes you're just wrong. You just think you deserve a raise, but you actually don't. And sometimes, I've seen plenty of people who, me included, who had to wait another year because maybe this year there was an actual reason for it, and you just keep at it, and you keep demonstrating that you actually worth that. And the next year when you come back with your message, if you kept delivering, your message is stronger than the year before. And the reality is there will be a year where it will be a good year, especially if you target a healthy institution. That's also an important topic. Like if you're in an unhealthy institution, which is losing money, which is be it due to your department or not. Like it can be losing so much money in another department that there's just no money. Yeah. So assuming you're in a healthy institution, you will have, I would say, every 3-4 years, you have a good year, a medium year, a bad year, and maybe another medium-ish. So that's kind of the usual cycle I've seen is over 4 or 5 years, you will have seen all the variations. Your goal is to be well positioned in the, call it pecking order, when the good year arrives, and to be preserved when the bad years are there. So if you're not down or small, very tiny down when it's a bad year, that's a good achievement. And when there's a good year, you need to be at the top of the minds, because then it's much easier to kind of distribute spoils than to distribute punishments. So regarding your specific psychological traits, I agree. It's actually very important. Like you need to be able, and you can learn it. It's not, some people are naturally better at it, but you can learn having more uncomfortable conversations, and you need to remove the emotion out of it. Like the more emotional you tend to become in these conversations, when you get maybe feedback you didn't expect. Like even in this world, getting actual honest feedback is more and more difficult because maybe there's more discomfort around directness. The overall, I would say, environment is becoming more maybe soft because there were past excesses on the other directions. Maybe, we all know all these stereotypical movies with people shouting at each other everywhere and so on. That's not the world today at all. The world is maybe more shy, maybe more introvert, maybe less direct. And so getting that hard feedback can be surprising. And you need to be able to take it in a rational way. Maybe it's wrong feedback, actually. Maybe your manager is wrong, or maybe not, but you need to be able to have the conversation in a respectful, fact-based, and being able to think of yourself from outside almost. So not you as being, the fact that you have a mortgage is irrelevant for the bank. So some people go through this, like they make it personal. They make it, I need to get a raise because I have expenses, but this is not the bank's problem. So it's a mix of all these abilities. There's also another one which I have in mind. Like as you progress in the hierarchy, you realize that very very senior people, meaning say people that are probably three levels above you, type of thing,
Yeah.
have another skill set, which you
Reflecting.
yes, it's the skill set of you and it's almost you almost get some sort of admiration for them once you have gone through this once. Like you go thinking, okay, I have all my facts, I'm gonna be calm, and then you go and you speak to a given person, and then you realize they just talked for 25 minutes of the 30 that you had with them, and now they have a meeting, and now
Is up.
time is up,
Yeah.
and because they're so senior, your next catch up cannot probably happen before 6 months.
Yeah.
This is the reasonable time frame for which they will have
Yeah.
forgotten about you for enough for them to be okay to catch up with you. So managing these meetings with senior people from which you want something is also a skill. Like even just getting their attention span, because they are and it's not personal. This is also like none of this is personal. They're also human. You need to put yourself in their shoes. You're like a very senior MD. You have 200 people who want to be paid more. And out of them, like they're relevant 15 MDs that you actually see reasonably often, they're all fighting for their team, explaining why their team is the best.
Yeah.
So their attention span is actually quite valuable and quite difficult to access. And you need to understand that. Like you cannot expect them to allocate their prime focus on you just because you happen to be you, and for you, well, you're the most important thing. So you just go through, build a little maybe personal relationship with them. I wouldn't call it personal, but maybe just business relationship where you show your face regularly, you build some contact, they know more about you, and then you end up building your case progressively.
So it sounds like there is a lot of elements from stoicism which needs to be to be had in the mind in order to address this issue of a salary negotiation properly. But indeed, I mean, it is worth all the hustle and the struggles because that's what actually defines your trajectory in terms of salary for the next years. And as we know, the trajectories can have a very high standard deviation depending on which amount did you get the following year. Was it up? Was it down? And I think the most disturbing, I always find it the most disturbing is when you actually have proven yourself very well, technically in terms of revenue, but you don't get what you want. And in that case, you are faced with this choice of, well, choice number one that you said is feeling pitiful about yourself and being emotionally damaged, so to speak. Number two, you keep on doing the hard work until next year's meeting, which you will hopefully tilt in your favor. And I guess number three would be to get a counter offer from another firm. I would assume that makes things shake a little bit internally, and it's a big, strong element in your case.
If I can maybe just chime in that specific point, getting a counter offer is a game that is not always the best game, especially if you're getting a counter offer just to be retained. So then that's my personal view. Like once you are trying to get a job elsewhere, don't do it so that your current firm retains you. Like you need to find something that is actually worth going for.
Yeah.
And then if they retain you, it has to be, I would say, from a position of mutual respect and reasonable strengths on your side. So you do not want to extort them. So you want your retention to work. So either obviously if you're happy with your new offer and you just intend to leave, and okay, they try or don't try to retain you and you just left, that's one case, which is kind of clear, and then you just focus on your new opportunity. But if you're kind of open to retention, it has to make sense. So it cannot be just that you've done a given job for the past 5 years, and now suddenly to retain you, they're going to triple your salary. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because first it creates some weird reflection. Like how come they can pay 3 times more now suddenly, while for the past 5 years they pretended that they had no money? Are they taking the piss? Do they actually not value me? And they just think maybe they were thinking I'm naive. It just creates all sort of bad blood that is not healthy. The second case for which they could have kept you is if you actually had extremely high short-term value. So what I mean by that is your coworker also resigned and your manager went to another department. And now you're kind of alone there. You're relatively junior, maybe underpaid. And you just happen to be the only one who actually knows anything about that. And you resign. You're not that expensive. For them, doubling your salary for this year costs nothing compared to having an empty desk, which is literally impossible to manage. But this is bad. This is a bad raise because this means that the year after you will have a sword on top of your head because that means like they paid you as almost as a bribe, not as an actual recognition of anything. You don't want to be bribed into staying somewhere unless you literally don't care about any other year. So you want it to be healthy.
Before we move into talking about internships, one last question regarding actually two questions. So one would be about headhunters. As we know, the headhunter space is quite large and there are more and more executive firms getting into the market. And we can understand why, because the stakes are super high in terms of getting the commissions, which are linked to the salary of the person that they're going to place into the firm. That obviously creates very good headhunters, average headhunters, below par, mediocre headhunters. And as a candidate, you can easily get overwhelmed with a huge amount of requests or emails or messages from these people without being able really to filter out and know which one is worth talking to, which one does actually have the contact with the managers in those firms, the hiring managers. So how can you navigate in this swamp of so many unknowns that you actually need to master to land the job that you are looking for?
So the headhunting space, as you say, is very diverse. There's a lot of hit and a lot of miss. And this is for a few reasons. So the first reason is the level of professionalism or ethics or whatever you want to call it of various headhunters. And the value exchange that happened between a given candidate and a given headhunter. What I mean by that is you both have something that the other wants. So usually from the candidate, the only thing you want is an opportunity for a given job elsewhere that you may not have heard about otherwise. This is pretty much the only reason you're speaking to headhunters. For headhunters, it's a bit more fuzzy what they actually want from you. It can be that they think you're actually a good candidate for a given opportunity that they have. It can be that they are like maybe a some junior headhunter that is trying to build his teeth in the industry. So he's just building contact address, like kind of. So he's trying to maybe get to know you so that when an offer or when they get a mandate to find someone, he is the best positioned headhunter to suggest relevant CVs to his client. So that he doesn't have anything at the moment, but he's just trying to get to know you. Or at the most, I would say, difficult to deal with is the headhunters that are just there to fish for information. So they don't actually want to give you any opportunity. They don't really care about you. And especially as a junior person, you're kind of a bit still fresh and naive, and you don't know this like until it happens one or two times, and they just keep like asking you about who is doing what in your team, and this guy actually, what is he doing? Oh, and this guy reports to this guy. And some are more or less subtle. Some are very, very not subtle. So they just keep harassing you with questions, and you, after 2 minutes, you realize they're just not really valuable. But some just tend to waste your time a lot longer because they tease you with some fake offer, then that actually somehow disappeared, then they ask for a question, then this, and the conversation lasts for like 30 minutes, and you still don't know anything about any offer. So I would say the more valuable and the more senior you get and the more recognized in the street you get, the less they have the opportunity to kind of waste your time because you can afford to just be picky. If they don't want to disclose the opportunity with the specific bank or hedge fund and role, you just treat it as this is not a serious discussion. So all these like, oh, we have a medium seniority role in a top bank. Can you tell me what your VP is doing? This is just not a good conversation.
Yeah.
They need to give a name. They need to have some skin in the game as well, by giving information to get some information. If then you build a certain relationship with them, you can give them some information. I mean, after all, it's your way. It's a bit your currency as well to help them a bit. They help you, you help them. So it's a bit of a two-way street with good headhunters, and a bit of a one-way short-term game with bad ones. The other aspect with headhunting that people should probably be aware of, if you're trying to change career direction, they tend to be a bit worse than if you are trying to get into a similar role elsewhere, because it's a path of least resistance for them. So most mandates they get are, we're looking for Euro swaps trader. So the taking you and presenting you, who is an equity bank sector trader, is just not the optimal path for them. And even if you kind of have the relationship with them for them to make a bit of a favor, and you somehow manage to clear the filter of the hiring manager on the other side and actually get to have a conversation. This actually happened to me like early on in my career. So I was trying to change role, and I ended up doing it internally. But initially I was trying to get it outside, and there was an opportunity. I reached the final stages, and I was told, this is all great, we like you, but we prefer to take someone who was already doing that role.
Yeah.
And you cannot beat these people.
Yeah.
The people who are like you, as good as you, but just happen to also be doing the same role. So I would say the headhunters have a specific use case, but don't I would say the best opportunities, often maybe half of them, or if not 2/3, don't come through headhunters.
So then they would come either internally at the firm in which you are working,
internally, or through
your network, as we spoke about.
Exactly, through maybe luck, through you actually actively creating your luck. So, for example, you could, if you want to change career, especially, or you want to target a given industry, you want to move to the buy side, you want this, you can contact hiring manager. You can just be a hustler, effectively. Try to maybe have a call with some PM. He maybe not have, he might not have a role for you at the moment, but he will speak to you for 5-10 minutes because he just happens to be not busy and open. And maybe you give a good impression. Maybe 2 years later, 1 year later, he moves funds. Now he is a junior. He remember, there was this cool guy or cool lady I spoke to like 2 years ago, 1 year ago. Let me just see where they are now. You recognize, you have a coffee, and now there is a real role for which you're the prime candidates, almost like maybe either another couple, but you're 3 prime candidates for a role that has not been disclosed anywhere yet. The guy didn't even move funds. He's just thinking of resigning. He's already thinking that I will need staff.
Which is where social intelligence really come into play.
Of course,
being likable, building the relationships and keeping them steady, and showing that you can add value at any time.